The ordinary council meeting of the 23rd of February open at 1:03. Just run through the preliminaries. I wish to remind you that mobile phones do need to be switched off and that calls may not be made or received in the gallery. Please leave the room if you do need to address the matter. The exits, in the case of any emergency, the closest exit for the gallery is immediately to their left, out onto the veranda, and for councillors, the closest point either through the door past the kitchen or out through the front meeting room. I just want to remind everybody that we are here for the benefit of the community and to undertake community business. So I ask that people show respect and courtesy to each other and that we progress in a way that the community can feel some reassurance in our conduct. Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge country, the Balladong Noongar people, who are the traditional custodians of the land where we meet today, and the Yuid and Whadjuk peoples, who are respective custodians, are traditional custodians in respective areas of the land of the wider Shire of Tujay. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. I notice we are one councillor short. Have we received an apology from Councillor?
We know that Councillor Wrench, my apologies, Councillor Wrench indicated that she would not be able to attend in person, but was hoping to attend via Zoom if she could.
Right, thank you. As we've not had any approach by Zoom, I will take that as an apology being received from Councillor Wrench. We have no approved leave of absences, nor applications for leave of absences. So moving to public question time. Prior to starting, Council, do any of you have any interest you wish to declare? No? Then we'll move to public questions. Is there anybody in the community who'd like to?
Excuse me, Madam President. Could we deal with 4.1 before we deal with 4.2?
Quite correct. That is the correct order, and I stand. Starting with the questions that councillors have provided prior to the meeting. Members of the public have provided at the last meeting. Yes, now I'm back on track. The following question on notice was received by Mr. Larry Graham. The summary of the question 2, which was on the 29th of November 2021, the FOI Commissioner ruled that information I had sought access to under the FOI Act was not exempt matter as claimed by the Shire. So I asked the Shire, I asked why the Shire has not forwarded me the relevant information. The response is the letter received from the Office of the Information Commissioner on the 29th of November 2021 had indicated the disputed information is exempt under clause 3.1 of Schedule 1 to the Freedom of Information Act. Mr. Graham had not been forwarded the information, as under section 24, the disputed information had not yet been redacted from the documents he had asked for. The disputed information has since been redacted and Mr. Graham has been provided with a copy.
Some clarification on it's the FOI request, what the FOI request was about, which particular FOI request this was.
Just bear with me, part of my screen has disappeared and I can't read it. Can we remove the section on the screen with Councillor Wrench, please, so I can read the answer? Councillor Wrench is coming online. Right. Just allowing that Councillor Wrench has been able to attend, and we are just making that made. Right. I cannot pertain that from the question as it is. I'll defer to the Madam CEO, please, if you could clarify that question.
Madam President, I'm not able to provide an answer to that question right now, and I would request that you take that question on notice.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, so having got that clarification...
One moment,
yeah.
Councillor. Are you asking leave for a further question
No, it must
or
be
clarification?
Just clarification. There's a question there. Yeah, if we don't know what it's about, who gave the answer?
I would suggest that the answer was probably provided sometime in the formation of the agenda, and the CEO, do you have any?
The response was provided by the Executive Assistant. I believe it was to do with contractual matters, but I will provide a further clarification in the minutes.
Yeah, so just for clarification, it was... well, we'll have to wait and see. I'll come back to that.
Councillor,
Yeah, I'll come back to
this is not a debate. Thank you.
No, I'm not having a debate. I'm telling you I might come back to something later.
You want that's fine, but that clarification will be sought and added. It is somewhat difficult at times when an officer's report is done to know which of, particularly if there's been several. Are there any further questions that were taken on notice, Maria, or is that the only one? Right, thank you. Which case then, we will move to public question time. Thank you. Mrs. Hall, do you wish to raise some questions? If you could please step to the podium. Is there a staff member present to just check that the microphone is actually operational? Right. Just please provide your name and address and then proceed.
Elaine Hall, it's on 2J West Road, and it's in relation to the Jewish War.
One moment, Mrs. Hall. We either need to get you to hold the microphone or move it closer.
Okay.
Masks are
Thanks
making
for
it
that.
a bit difficult to hear.
Okay. Right, so it's Elaine Hall and it's 2J West Road, Coondle, and my questions are with regard to the Jewers Pool Bindoon roadworks. The first question is, were existing traffic movements monitored prior to commencing roadworks?
Mr. Augustin, would you care to answer this question, please?
I believe I answered these questions already. Yeah, we have traffic counts. They are 2 years old, yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
The Shire has conducted traffic counts on Chuspool, Bindoon Road.
The next question is, what were the readings?
I have to take that question on notice.
So that was on notice. The third question is, what will be the completed carriageway width?
7 meters.
11?
7 meters. 7.
7 metres?
Yes.
That doesn't include the shoulders?
The shoulder is, from memory, 500 millimeters, so a meter in addition.
So the actual lanes need to be 3.5 metres each, And then there should be 1.5 for the shoulders, sealed shoulders. So that,
I
and plus
can
another
provide you with a
1.5.
drawing later.
So really it should be 10 metres. The carriageway should be 10 metres.
Yeah.
And you're making it 9.
It's up there.
Just bear with us. So the information is up on the screen. The proposed seal width is 8 metres and proposed formation is 9 metres. Is that correct?
Yeah.
That is correct. And the shoulders is 500 or a metre in addition. Does that answer your question, Mrs. Hall?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Foley, you've indicated you wish to ask a question.
Yeah, it's Brian. Can I take this mask down? My glasses are fogging up.
Y- yes, if you're not breathing directly on anyone, you shouldn't.
We'll just get them unfogged. Yeah, it's Brian Foley, Bindu and Jewers Pool Road. So, coincidentally, I've got a couple of questions on Bindu and Jewers Pool Road. When the shoulder repair, why wasn't the edges of the bitumen repaired and not just filled with gravel?
Again, I'll have to defer to Mr. Augustin. How long ago was this repair undertaken?
Well, they started the shoulder work prior to Christmas, but within a week or two, all the potholes were uncovered from just gravel. No repair work was ever done on any actual bitumen breakaways.
It would depend on which sections.
Oh, the section that they're doing the shoulder work on, where they broke all the trees down and everything there along that section.
I have to take your question on notice.
I think there needs to be some clarity exactly.
Yeah, it's
But that question,
yeah.
that answer will be provided to
Yeah.
you, Mr. Foley.
I can have a chat anyway later. The other question on Bindu Jewers Pool Road is, I know you've agreed to do the arborist repairs on the trees. When is that scheduled for?
In April, I can't give you a definite date at the moment.
All right. Any more questions? That's my 2. I've got a couple more to go.
Are there any others that wish to ask a question? If Mr. Foley, if you'd like to just hold on to the remainder of those questions, I'm sure we'll have time to address them. Mr. Twine, would you care to take the podium?
Yeah, hi, Eric Twine, 160 Leeming Road, New Nile. I was just last year between, and I can't give you an exact date, between seeding and harvest, I went to the agricultural freight route forums held by the state government. The federal government had given them $200,000 to do work on freight routes, basically, and mainly the discussion was about railway lines. But a very interesting thing that I noticed on the board when they had stuff up on the board as point things was that the main roads was prepared to look at taking back roads from shires if they've become more arterial roads than just shire roads. And I was just wondering if the 2J Shire has considered applying to the main roads with regards to the Jewers Pool Bindoon Road is one exact thing. The state government, in their wisdom, put the sale yards at Mouchet, so there's a lot more traffic on that for that road to get to the Mouchet sale yards now. And the other 2 roads that I had in mind would have been the Bajording Road, which leads onto the Irishtown Road, and the 2J Bindi Road, excuse me. And the reason there is that there's always been a lot of freight going through there anyway. The Bajording and Irishtown Road get a lot of hay traffic as well as grain traffic, as you know, a lot of the lime sand that's going to Northern comes across through Kalingri and then down there. and the fact that last season CBH closed at Bolgart bin, so a lot of the grain from Bolgart came down through 2J to the Avon or Maynard wheat bins, because even though Klingridge is a strategic site, it's going backwards. It's costing you money to go back.
Mr. Twine, it's very interesting, the background of this, but we do need to
basically
get to the
the
questions.
The question is, has the 2J Shire looked into applying to the main roads to have some of these roads taken back, because it'd save us a lot of money if main roads had them?
I can say that no, at this stage we have not, because we've just become aware of this. However, we will be certainly following up and looking into this matter. And thank you for bringing it to our attention.
And just briefly, another, with regards to the tiny houses, or tiny cabins, tiny houses, tiny, whatever they call them, I know they're not approved yet, so we don't know the answer whether they're going to be there or not. The only one concern, which is not a main concern, I've talked to the people that are operating them and people that own the land, because I actually lease one of the blocks that some of them are going to go on to.
Just tighten it up for the question there, please.
Yeah, a bit of background. Is there any likelihood of the Shire putting conditions on the agricultural industry like they have done with the extractive industries, now that this is going to be a tourism industry, in regards to movements of vehicles on weekends and stuff like that? Because I'd hate to see that happen.
It's certainly not been raised, and I've just had an indication from our planner, Mr. DeVos, that that's not the case. So, no, it's not on the horizon and it's not been raised in discussion.
Yeah, I know. I've read the agenda and there's no conditions being put on, but there was no conditions about Saturdays when the extractive industries were started either 20 years ago. So
but that was 20 years ago, and I think we are an agricultural community. That is most definitely our primary base of our cultural identity and our economic, and that will certainly be a consideration if that proposal should be raised. I cannot see the use of small businesses such as this having an impact on general business. No.
Thanks.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, Mr. Foley, would you care to resume?
The low-flow standpipe, what's the position of that within the Shire at the present time?
You're referring to the community one in the main street?
Yes.
This is a great pain to us as well as the community. Basically, a part failed due to excessive and prolonged heat. We were under the impression the part was on its way. However, recent conversation is they are actually preparing a hybrid part with a higher heat resistance. The CEO is in fairly regular contact. We are still waiting. So at this stage, it has not been shipped. As soon as it's shipped, we can get it installed. It does seem to be a fairly common problem at the moment with supplies. However, it's a very frustrating and badly timed one for us.
Maybe nobody told them 2J got a bit hot. Now, in the meantime, would the Shire look at actually opening that up so people could still get water but not be charged?
I think you need to bear in mind that the Shire pays for the water that comes through that standpipe. So that becomes a cost into the budget that is then a cost borne by the ratepayers as a whole. So therefore it would probably not be, and we have, this point has been raised, but it really wouldn't be fair on the community as a whole if a few people were accessing free water at the expense of the others.
Okay. Next question is regarding one of the agenda items, which is a community grant scheme, which was wonderful. Have you got any plans of how this would operate at this stage if it gets approved?
The community grant scheme, if you've read the agenda, it's basically to provide a framework around and an accountability for community money that is received in rates being redistributed back within the community. So the purpose is simply that through applying and having to explain what the use is, by being able to account for the expenditure of the money that they receive, there is accountability to the community of those funds of how they've been spent within the community.
Yeah,
It's from their point of view, is very little change. They apply prior to budget as they've done in the past. It's considered at budget, and then at the end of their allocation, they would be asked to account. So they'll be asked to provide some evidence of that expenditure and how it was used.
Thank you. Last question, just regarding the 952, the vegetation offset. I noticed that the road works will be 1.7 kilometres north of the cemetery for 3 kilometres. Does that include the Drummond Rose hedge? I was going to mark it out on my speedo, but I forgot to do it. Hugo may know.
Excuse me, could you please put your...
Could I please defer to the Manager of Infrastructure and Assets?
What? Can you just give the distance again? Because we do...
Well, it says here, road from approximately 1 kilometre north of the cemetery, extending for a further 3 kilometres. So what's that, 4.7? I don't know, do you know the story on the Drummond Rose hedge along the left-hand side of 2J Bindi Bindi Road?
Yes, we're certainly familiar with it, and it'd certainly be taken into account.
Yeah, I just want to make people aware that you certainly wouldn't want to start touching that when you're road widening or anything like that. There'd be a little bit of a upset community.
No,
all right?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McEwen?
Yeah. Given the range of questions we've had today, is it possible to provide in the minutes the name of the person providing the answers? Because at the moment that's not provided. Do I need to...
Generally it is. It usually refers to the Shire President responded.
No, it doesn't ever say that.
Doesn't?
No. So do I need a procedural motion or to do that?
No.
Or can we just do that?
We can just do that.
Yeah.
Yes, not a problem.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Councillor McCormick?
Madam President, in light of some questions regarding roadworks, could we post any roadwork drawings onto our website so it's plain and obvious what's going on certain roads?
That's certainly a consideration, and we can have that discussion, absolutely.
Thank you.
We'll move through to confirmation of the minutes, please. We have the ordinary council meeting held on the 21st of December 2021. Do I have any questions or clarifications arising from this matter? If not, do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Pearce. And a second, any objections?
I wasn't at the meeting, Madam President, so I'm going to vote against it. So if you want to proceed on that basis.
Then I require a seconder. Councillor Hart, thank you. All in favour? Thank you, that was carried 6-1. Oh, Councillor Wrench, how did you vote?
In favour.
Thank you. So it was 7-1. The special meeting of council held on the 2nd of February. Are there any questions or clarifications? Do I have a mover? Councillor Hart, thank you. Do I have any objections? In which case, this is carried 8-0. And we have the agenda meeting held on the 16th of February 2022. Do I have any questions or clarifications from the notes of the agenda briefing? Do I have... Yes, Councillor Pearce.
I did ask a question about the tiny cabins proposal, and I did receive an answer from the acting planning officer. But what I would like to clarify is that, is there any means that we as a council can ensure that we don't get applications presented to us in December, January, when people are away in the community, maybe councillors away, so in the advertising period? I understand from my answers that we are constrained by the Act, which I received in my answer, but
Councillor, this is not really pertaining to this directly. It's a matter really we could raise and discuss. It's a procedural matter. So it's something we can raise and discuss at a later date.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions or clarifications, do I have a mover? Councillor Rutham. Any objections? Then it's carried 8-0.
No presentations or petitions or deputations received.
Right, thank you. In which case, we'll move forward to announcement of the presiding member. So, Council has resumed with an improved audio-visual system for council meetings, a change to Wednesdays at 1 p.m. for agenda briefings and ordinary council meetings, and preparations have been made towards the WA border being reopened. Change has become the new normal for our community, but adaptation and resilience is what we do best. In response to the pending border reopening, 2J's Local Emergency Management Committee, comprising of a variety of stakeholders including the Department of Communities, the 2J Police and other first responders for emergency management services, met to plan for contingencies that may emerge. The Shire has also responded with an internal pandemic working group to address organisational responses and liaise and inform the community. The current directive requires masks to be worn inside. The school pedestrian bridge from Newcastle Park that had been reconstructed and reopened in 2011 at a cost of approximately $900,000 is now being vandalised by holes being punched into the walkway, and also motorbike traffic is using the access. Please take note that these actions result in ratepayer money being diverted from being spent on better purposes that would benefit the community in order to address vandalism. Council has seen the departure of 3 councillors since October. Councillors Brian Rayner and Therese Chitty, who did not contest the last election in October 2021, and Councillor Benjamin Bell, who resigned in January this year. Councillors Rayner and Chitty, elected in 2013, dedicated 8 years to the community, in part as Shire President and Deputy President respectively. Councillor Bell was elected in 2017 and served 4 years. All councillors served during the notable achievements of the completion of Butterley Cottages and the design and build of the 2J Recreation Centre, but also during a very difficult period of political turmoil. Council recognises their contributions, their time invested and willingness to accept the price of service, and we thank you. My activities since the last meeting are recorded there for community notice. Moving to item 9.1.1, 5 tiny cabins at Lot 2, Gamelling Road, Gamelling 2J Road, Dumbarton. The officer's recommendation is on page 13. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Hart. Are there any questions and clarifications further to those that have already been submitted? Councillor Pearce.
From our agenda briefing, I did bring up the situation that there was to be a management plan, and I was led to believe that this will be included in the conditions that the applicants provided a management plan as a condition. Could I just have some clarification on that, please?
Certainly, Councillor. I believe the management plan has been received, and I will defer to Mr De Vos.
Yes, that's correct. We've received management plans for this and for the later item as well, and conditions have also been incorporated into the officer recommendation.
Clarification, Madam President. I don't think that's the officer's recommendation we saw at the agenda briefing.
No, Mr De Vos said he's just included these since receipt of the management plan.
I appreciate that. I think there are other changes as well, if they could be explained.
Mr De Vos, would you care to walk Council through the changes that you made to the recommendations?
Absolutely, thank you. Councillor McEwen, the main one I'll start with is the change in classification. There was discussion at the agenda briefing, and which is included in the body of the report. And just bear in mind, this is for this item and also for the later item as well, where the Shire was considering a reclassification from holiday accommodation to tourism development. Subsequent thought within our department we've decided to revert back to the original classification that has been applied for, which is a holiday accommodation, and that's been changed in the officer recommendation. Furthermore, I've added point D, which is a request for a detailed management plan to be submitted and approved by the local government, and it's outlining the various elements that we would require in the management plan. I can confirm that this plan for this item and for the other one has been received, and they've been included as the attachments today.
Thank you, Maria. Can you just scroll to the bottom of that and allow us just to read the rest? Thank you. Councillors, have you any questions that are arising? Councillor Pearce.
Yes, thank you for including the management plan. My concern is what will occur if the applicants do not follow the management plans and what is sought as on these conditions? Will there be, I'm not sure if the correct word is penalties, but what happens in the event that the conditions are not met?
It would be my understanding, as the plan is conditional to the application, that the application then would be not the application, but the permission would be withdrawn, but I'll seek clarification from Mr De Vos.
Thank you. So as in with any planning approval that the Shire puts forward and applies conditions of approval to, if these conditions are not met, then it's a breach of the planning approval, and it's a compliance process that we obviously follow as an administration. There are penalties under the Act that we can apply in that case.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Clarifications? Are there any objections? In which case this item is carried 8-0. Moving to item 9.1.2, reconsideration, section 31, reconsideration of lot 77, Bajording Road, Bajording. The officer's recommendation is on page 17. Do I have a mover? Councillor McCormick, thank you. Any questions or clarifications, please? Councillor McEwen.
Yeah, the only suggestion I've got is a slight approval, a slight change to the recommendation in regard to Part B, which refers to the existing causeway at the south of Dam 1. So I'll read what it says. The existing causeway at the south of Dam 1 will be restored and widened to enable Mr Maxted to be able to drive a vehicle across. So that's one modification. But the other one I'd like to put in is that there should be no change to the water pipe at that position. So it shouldn't be raised at all during that process.
Certainly, Mr De Vos, would you care to respond?
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. So if Maria could please scroll down to the conditions that we put in there. The remaining dams numbered 2 to 5 will remain unmodified to allow for nature to run its course. So we've captured that, so there's to be no further modification at all, and that's captured in that condition there. With regards to the first point, I was under the impression I went through and changed it this morning with that slight wording change.
Yeah, no, it's in that same clause, clause B. That's the cause, that's where he's going to drive across.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure that during that restoration and widening, that water pipe, there must be a water pipe there, is there? Yeah, that's
yes.
that's not moved, it's not raised.
That's included in the plan, and that's
okay.
not to be moved. Yep.
Are you suggesting an amendment to that? Or?
No, based on what Mr De Vos has said, if it's on the plan not to change it.
Then you'll leave it. Right, thank you. Any further questions or clarifications? Any objections? This item is carried 8-0. Item 9.13, 9 tiny cabins at lot 200 and 400, Woodendale Road, Noonal. Officer's recommendation is page 23. Do I have a mover?
Once again, Madam President, this has changed from the agenda briefing, so perhaps Mr De Vos could lead us through it.
Absolutely. Mr De Vos, would you care again to take council through the changes?
Thank you, Councillor McEwen. Just to reiterate, so we were previously looking at reclassifying the actual land use from holiday accommodation to tourism development, and that's what has been contained in the body of the report. Subsequent to the agenda briefing, however, we've had further discussion as a department and believe that it should revert back to the original classification as holiday accommodation, so the recommendation has been changed accordingly. Also, in line with the request taken at the agenda briefing, we've included a condition regarding a management plan. The management plan has been included in the attachments because it was provided today by the applicant.
Thank you. Councillor Ruthin, you have a query?
Thank you. So Part D, 2D, refers to a detailed management plan is to be submitted to and approved by the local government. So will that come to us separately?
In this instance, we've actually been supplied the plan already, and it would just be to the satisfaction of the Shire administration in that instance.
So do we need to change the wording for that?
I think it just becomes I guess, an erroneous condition. It's probably not required, but it doesn't hurt the recommendation either way. They've supplied it, so we can just mark that off as being complied with.
I do have one question. What provision has been made if any sort of emergencies should arise at the site during occupancy?
Thank you, Madam President. If you just bear with me, I'll just bring up the management plan. So at the end of the management plan document, the applicants have provided 24-hour emergency contact telephone numbers and emails for complaints, and for any issues, there's for maintenance and so on, there's a host of other numbers that have been provided. The Shire is satisfied in this instance that they've taken appropriate measures to be able to be contacted. In the case of a normal large-scale emergency, then the standard 000 numbers would be the ones that they would be going for.
Thank you. If there are no... Councillor Pearce?
Just getting back to that point D, point that Councillor Ruthin made up, would it be of advantage to say the management plan is to be submitted to the satisfaction of the local government rather than have the word approved?
I would suggest that it needs to be approved. Am I correct, Miss?
Yeah, so in this instance, it's very common for us to require management plans from time to time on a range of different development applications that we see. We don't feel it's always a requirement to bring those approvals back to the council and believe that they can be adequately managed at an administration level.
If there are no further questions, do I have a mover? Councillor Ruthin?
Sorry, just one more question. Given 2J's patchy phone coverage, do we know what the reception or the service is like in these areas? So if anybody needed to make an emergency call, is that possible?
That's a very good question. I probably have to take that on notice, please.
Thank you. Coming back, councillors, is there a mover for this motion? Councillor Pearce? If there are no further questions or clarifications, are there any objections? which case this item is carried 8-0. Moving to item 9.1.4, lot 97 Beaufort Street West 2J. This is a 5-dog application. The officer's recommendation is on page 27. Any questions or clarifications, councillors? Is there a mover? Councillor Jury? Any objections? We have 2 objections. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hart, thank you. Councillor Jury, would you care to speak to the motion, please?
Yes, I feel that the lady has had the dogs for all their lives. They are of an age where they are getting much older and won't be living much longer, and to now have to say that she cannot have the dogs would not be fair on the dogs or to the lady itself. Obviously she had them when she lived in New South Wales on semi-rural and in residential areas as well, and had them registered. They're well looked after and cared for, so I don't see any objection to having the dogs on the property if they're maintained and looked after and kept enclosed.
Councillor McCormick, would you care to speak?
Sure. I oppose the recommendation based on there seems to be a recent trend where 3 to 6 dogs permits keep appearing, and I just think that it sets a precedence, possibly sets a precedence where applications continue to come through, which is against the long-standing 2-dog policy. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Hart, would you second the motion? Would you care to speak?
Yes, I would. Taking Councillor McCormick's point about setting precedents, my own view on applications like this is that each application should be judged on its merits alone. Yes, there are examples of unfortunate outcomes by some dog owners, but I don't see that this should reflect on any individual dog owner's application. So from that viewpoint, I support the motion.
Councillor Pearce, Councillor Ruthen, you also objected. Do you wish to speak?
Thank you. As hard as this may sound, I think that the owners prior to moving to WA with these dogs probably should have checked what the local conditions were that would be applied. I personally think that 5 dogs is too many. In February alone, there have been on Facebook 11 or 12 dogs escaped in 2J. And I just don't support 5 dogs.
Do we have another speaker for or against?
Yes, Danielle, Councillor Wrench here. I would like to speak for. Whilst I do agree that we are receiving a number of applications now for 3 to 6 dogs, there is an allowance for our community to apply for this. And these dogs, as Councillor Drury mentioned, these dogs are getting on in age, and I believe a few of them have not very long to go, sad to say. And I do think that each one should be taken on merit, and the background we've done on the applicant shows that these dogs have been kept well, maintained well, and there does not seem to be any adverse information in relation to them. So I support this application.
Thank you, Councillor. I will also speak. I will be supporting this application. However, I do strongly object to more than 2 dogs per owner, except for the exceptions of working dogs, obviously animals who are assisted living, and there are a few rare compassionate exceptions. I do appreciate that the owner has owned these dogs for a long time, that they are small breeds, that they have recently moved here, and it would be a very difficult decision to make. I do also appreciate that it is a fairly relatively large property for the breed of dog, and that containment is possible and should minimise any noise or any other discomfort to the neighbours. However, our provisions have not been particularly strong, and I think this is an area that we as a council really do need to look at, because we are constantly being put in a position of having to make decisions that are, while consistent with policy, they are not really consistent with the intent of this community, and it's time to review. I will be supporting, but I'd like to see some changes made to our dog policies and put some consistency into the decision making and some surety into the community. Councillor Jury, you have the right of reply if nobody else wishes to speak.
Thank you, Madam President. I don't wish to reply.
Thank you, in which case I will put this item to the vote. All in favour? This item is carried 6-2. The councillors that vote, 7-2. Oh, that's what I said. Yes. Thank you, Councillor. You threw my count out. 6-2, those councillors that voted against were Councillor McCormick and Councillor Ruthven. Can I see a show of against, please? Thank you. Thank you. Moving forward to the community funding policy. This has been explained a little in the questions that Mr. Foley raised. The officer's recommendation is on page 30, and it's that we adopt the community funding policy as attached to this report and request the CEO to make the policy publicly available on the Shire's website. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jury. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Do I have any objections? This item is carried 8-0. Item 9.2.2, the monthly financial statements. Officer's recommendation is on page 33. I just clarify these statements are for December 21 and January 2022. Do I have a mover? Councillor Ruthven. Any questions? Councillor McEwen.
I've got some objection as well, Madam President, if you'd like to. So, would I ask a question now? Okay.
Certainly.
Look, I'll ask a question I asked at the agenda briefing, just for the information of those that weren't at the agenda briefing. Just as one example, on page 166, of the agenda attachments, referring to capital expenses. There's no year-to-date budget for any capital expense to the end of December. So all the year-to-date budgets to the end of December for capital expenses are zero, which implies that we had no budget for any capital works in the first half of the year. Well, that can't be possible. So that's my question is, why are the year-to-date budget figures all set at zero to the end of December?
I will have to defer that question to Ms Bateman. Would you care to answer?
So when we adopted the budget, we didn't have we didn't adopt year-to-date budgets for the construction program. We should have, noting that due to the late budget adoption, most of the works would be done in the latter half of the year anyway. So we can definitely bring that back, as mentioned last week, through the mid-year review process and deal with that there.
Do you have any further questions, Councillor McEwen?
No, just objection.
Not a problem. You'll have an opportunity in a moment. Do we have a seconder then? Councillor Pearce? Councillor Ruthin, would you care to speak to the motion?
No, I don't have much to say apart from the fact that there were questions raised at the agenda briefing and I was satisfied with the answers. Thank you.
Councillor McEwen?
Thank you, Madam President. Look, my aim in objecting is not to criticise the actual report. That's not the principal aim, although the report is clearly deficient. It's not, I'm not attributing blame for that. I'm just trying to draw attention to the fact that the current Shire financial software isn't working correctly. And while that's not working correctly, we're not getting informative financial reports. And I just need that to go on record. But if we just vote for this and accept it, we're not recognising that problem. And that's not just administration's problem, that's council's problem as well.
Thank you. Do you have any particular wording of that you would like it recorded as?
Oh, if you need a reason why, the reason I'm voting against it is that the monthly financial reports are not providing adequate information or even accurate information about the financial state of the Shire.
Due to?
Due to errors.
Due to current difficulties?
Oh, well, if you like, yeah.
Yeah, due to current difficulties with the conversion of the...
Something like that.
Yeah. Right. Thank you. So do we... Councillor Pearce.
Yes, I am supporting these reports. I understand that there are immense problems with the transition to the software package, and this is no criticism of the administration or of our council staff. But until the transition occurs and reports can be correctly generated, I feel that we are caught between a poor place and accepting integrity and honesty of the staff that what is being presented is correct.
Thank you. Councillor, is there anybody else who wishes to speak for or against? Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Madam Shire President. From my own viewpoint, as an elected member, if we have a look at the officer's recommendation, it is that council receives the monthly financial statements for the months ending 31st of December 2021 and 31st January 2022.
Councillor, can you just slow down and repeat that a little more clearly? Thank you.
Right, let's try that. That the officer's recommendation that council receives the monthly financial statements for the months ending 31st December 2021 and 31st January 2022. My own viewpoint as an elected member is that I'm here to make decisions on the best information that we have available to us at any one time. Notwithstanding the issues that Councillor McEwen has correctly highlighted, I see this as the best information that we have, and I'm quite happy as an elected member to run with it. Thank you.
Thank you, councillors. Any further speakers? If not, Councillor Ruthin, you have the right of reply.
Nothing more to add, thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll put this matter to the vote. All in favour? Right. That. Councillor Wrench, how do you vote?
In favour.
Thank you. That's carried 7-1. Councillor McEwen, can you just confirm against? Thank you. Councillor McEwen is voted against. Item 9.3.1, a Governance Review Action Plan Progress Report. Oh, I've jumped. I have to. Right, please. It's item 9.2.3, list of payments. The officer's recommendation is page 36. Do I have a mover, please? Councillor Ruthin? Are there any questions or clarifications that have arisen out of this matter? Are there any objections? In which case this item is carried 8-0. Moving to item 9.3.1, Governance Review Action Plan, the Progress Report. The officer's recommendation, as I stated earlier, is page 39. Do I have a mover for this item? Councillor Hart. Do I have any questions or clarifications? Any objections? This matter is carried 8-0. Thank you. Item 9.3.2, Policy Review Process. Officer's recommendation, page 44. Do I have a mover? Councillor Jury, thank you. Any questions or clarifications? Any objections? This item is carried 8-0. Understanding Order 9.3. Item 9.5.1, Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendation. The officer's recommendation is page 49. As a point of community interest, because ears do pop up when we mention fire, the Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendation is that Council 1 endorses the draft SOP, which is Standing Operating Procedures 2.5, use of flash hoods during bushfire operations, and 2, approves the update of the Bushfire Operating Administrative Procedures to include SOP.25 by the Community Emergency Services Manager. So, do I have a mover? Councillor Pearce, any questions or clarifications? Any objections? It's carried 7-0. 8-0. Writing 8, saying 7. Item 9.5.2, the Environment Advisory Committee, EAC, native vegetation offset for proposed clearing for roadworks. The officer's recommendation is page 55. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Hart. Any questions or clarifications? Yes, Councillor Pearce.
I've just noticed that this offset is for the mitigate the potential impacts of future Shire of 2J projects. So this will be for all future projects that we're putting aside this place. Is that correct?
Not exactly. It will depend on the areas that when when an offset is required, the department defines the size of the area that they wish. This area here, which is quite a large area, will be able to be used until such time as we basically run out of area. So
therefore my question is, should it be the word impacts of future Shire of 2J projects? Because maybe 3 or 4 years down the track, future projects won't be able to use that. That's what I'm saying. Am I being a little bit picky?
it does say future here. Are we at cross purposes here, Councillor? Or am I misunderstanding you?
I may be just being a little picky. To me, it just reads that potential impacts of future Shire of 2J projects, but it may be in 3 or 4 years' time that this offset will not be sufficient. So do we need to say, put that word future?
Madam President, if I may, it doesn't say all future projects. So there's an implication there that should we run out of space in the covenanted area, then we will have to come back to council and revisit that.
Thank you.
Any further questions or clarifications? Councillor McEwen.
So who is going to keep track of this? And can we have it included maybe in the councillor information bulletin that we receive from time to time?
Mr DeVos, would you care to respond?
Yes, thank you. I think we can certainly track it across all of the different departments that would be needing to utilise a clearing permit process. And yes, certainly it can be updated into the councillor information bulletin.
Councillor McCormick.
With respect to this environmental conservation covenant, is the proposed body of land fenced? And secondly, will it require fire breaks on the perimeter?
Mr DeVos, would you care to respond?
If I might be able to defer to the SESM, who's actually in the room at the moment. Right, is that?
Okay. I'd actually have to probably take some of this on notice. I'm assuming the lot of land that's being spoken about is the one I think is being talked about. So, as I haven't been involved in this process, okay, that is the lot of land that I was thinking about. So, yes, the Shire does maintain fire breaks on that land already, and a covenant wouldn't prevent or stop those works needing to continue. So essentially, yes, the current state of the fire breaks would need to be maintained. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, sure, that's one of them, but the second one is part of that bush line goes up against paddocks. So I'm just wondering if stock is fenced in at the moment, or you know, if that bush line is fenced at the moment.
It would be my expectation that if they're keeping stock there, there would be a fence. Is anybody able to confirm that?
We'll have to take that on notice and get
We'll
some
have
advice.
to take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions or clarifications? Any objections, councillors? If there's no objections, then this item's carried. 8-0. As there's no other business to...
Madam President, there are a number of questions provided on notice by Councillor McEwen, which we've provided responses to.
Thank you. Thank you. The following questions were taken on notice were received from Councillor McEwen. Councillor McEwen, do you wish to read these out?
Can we see?
How many questions are there, Maria? You should be able to make your annual leave adequately by the time you finish reading.
Madam President, I indicated
Given this has been supplied and they'll be in the minutes, I don't think I need to read. They're quite not complicated. They're quite detailed, the questions.
Yes, yeah. It does add years to our lives. So,
Madam President, if I may just point out though, I indicated at the agenda briefing last week that given the time constraints of officers at the moment, some of the questions need time to analyse and properly respond. So I have put that response into Maria, if you can go up a little bit further so that I can actually just show right to the beginning, please. So question 1, we've basically said that we'd like to take on notice until the April council meeting. Question 2, there has been a breach and we'll be following that up with the Department of Local Government. Question 3, again we've asked to go to the April 22 OCM. Question 4, there's quite a lengthy response provided there. Question 5, we have rectified the financial statements on the website as pointed out. Question 6, we've asked to go to the April OCM, and questions 7 and 8 also to the April OCM.
I take it you're happy with the questions, Councillor McEwen?
Very happy with the questions, Madam President.
That was a very leading
you led me into
question
that
on my behalf.
Because I haven't got the answers in writing, could you forward those to me?
Yes,
Thank
certainly.
you.
All right. Thank you. I would like the officer's recommendation is that the response to the questions raised by Councillor McEwen be received and noted. Do we have a mover? Councillor McEwen? Do we have any questions or clarifications? Any objections? In which case, they'll be moved, carried 8-0. Thank you very much. Now, that does conclude our business. I will just read the next meetings that are due is the Ordinary Council meeting of the 23rd of March in 2022. We have some, thank you, the agenda briefing on the 16th of March 2022, Audit and Risk Committee meeting on the 2nd of March, which we have coming up, and the Museum Advisory Committee meeting also on the 2nd of March. That concludes our business, and I declare the meeting closed at 19 minutes past 2. Thank you very much for your attendance.